Mass deportation is a bad idea that places America last, and if you think it helps our country, you're wrong. In this video, I'll be breaking down nearly every reason why it fails, and by the end of the video, I'll have any honest person convinced. If you know someone that supports mass deportation, send them this. They've been sold a lie, and this video tears it apart. Here's a first fact. Undocumented immigrants help the economy, and mass deportation is detrimental to the economy. First and foremost, undocumented immigrants pay over $100 billion in taxes on the federal, state, and local level every single year. And they don't reap the benefits from it. Section 8, EBT, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, those are all benefits that they're ineligible for. So when they pay taxes, they're actually disproportionately subsidizing the benefits that citizens receive, not the other way around. They also account for an estimated 8.3 million individuals in the American labor force. And they're actually more likely to participate in the labor force than American citizens, meaning they work harder. And this leads us to our next fact, which is that undocumented immigrants contribute $400 to $500 billion to the American GDP every single year. So you might be asking yourself right now, well, Dean, why does this matter? Well, it makes mass deportation incredibly expensive. Think about it. If we deported every single undocumented immigrant in America, we say goodbye to the $100 billion per year that they pay in taxes that our government could be using to make our country greater. We say goodbye to the $400 to $500 billion that they contribute to the GDP. All of a sudden, our economy will grow at a slower rate. And don't even get me started on what would happen if we forcefully removed 8.3 million workers from the American labor force. American industries would be crippled. When you forcefully remove millions of people that make the goods that we use, buy to thrive in America, what happens? Our productive capacities go down and our manufacturers get less efficient. Not to mention that when an undocumented immigrant works a job, they get paid, and then they spend that money in the American economy. So American industries are crippled not only because we're forcing millions of people out of the labor force, but also because on the consumer side of things, all of a sudden there's less people spending less money. So for all of these reasons, mass deportation is truly placing the American economy last. And now that I've demonstrated to you that mass deportation would weaken the American economy, consider this. The weaker our economy is, the higher level of poverty we have. And the more poverty we have, the more crime we have. So in other words, mass deportation will literally lead to more crime. Is that placing America first? And keep in mind, everything that we've discussed so far is just the economic implications of mass deportation. It doesn't begin to talk about the humanitarian concerns of ripping apart families or deporting immigrants without due process for prisons for terrorists in El Salvador. And this also doesn't begin to explore the fact that ultimately I believe that our government is responsible for a lot of the undocumented entry into America. Think about it. Nobody wants to be an undocumented immigrant. They can't get a loan to buy a house. They can't file for a tax return if they work as a W-2 employee. They don't have access to benefits like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. So ask yourself, why do they do it? It's because the legal means of entry into this country are simply unattainable for many immigrants. In some cases, it could take 10 to 15 years to become a citizen, so it takes way too long, and it could be too expensive. And there's a backlog of thousands of immigrants trying to come into our country because our government has refused to give proper and adequate funding and policy to ensure that the legal means of entry into this country are fast, low cost, and attainable for as many immigrants as possible. Have you ever heard President Trump speak at a mic at a podium once in the last 10 years about how he wants to make the legal means of entry into America better? If your answer is no, then you'd have to agree that President Trump has not once spoken about the root cause of undocumented entry into America. So what's the solution? Well, I think the solution is to offer every undocumented immigrant in this country that does not have prior violent offenses a pathway to residency or citizenship. And before you call me crazy, hear me out. They'll continue to be able to contribute to the American economy, paying taxes, growing the GDP, working and being more productive than US citizens on average. But they'll only do so to a higher degree. If they're residents or citizens, they'll have more bargaining power in the marketplace, meaning they'll be able to get higher wages from their employers. That means they'll go from providing $500 billion to the GDP per year to more than $500 billion to the GDP per year, as well as they'll pay more in taxes. I say that because undocumented immigrants right now are more likely to work under the table than residents or citizens because they're not a resident or citizen. They can't file for a return. But if they were, they'd be just as likely as a resident or citizen to take wages under the table, meaning more of them would go on record and pay taxes. Without a change in the material conditions of the immigrants, they'd go from paying $100 billion in taxes per year to more than $100 billion in taxes per year. And if your response is, well, Dean, they should be punished. They broke the law. Well, A, Donald Trump broke the law. He's a 34-count felon. America punished him by making him president. And B, I'm not convinced that I should care too much. It seems like a victimless crime, and it'll make our country better. And C, as I pointed out earlier, the issue of undocumented entry into America truly only exists because our Congress has neglected the legal means of entry, meaning they share a lot of the fault. And if they share the fault, they also share some of the responsibility of righting the wrong. And they shouldn't right that wrong through mass deportation because it hurts our country. So why don't they right that wrong through mass amnesty? Because it can only help.